Okay. Uh, let's go ahead and start the class of leadership. Okay, the learning objectives of this session would be understanding what methods have been used to study managerial work, understand the typical activity patterns for people in managerial positions, understand the different roles required for managers and how they are changing, understand how managerial roles and activities are affected by aspects of the situation, understand how managers cope with the demands, constraints, and choices confronting them, and understand the limitations of descriptive research. Can everybody hear me? Can everybody hear me? Yeah. I did a start, Mr. or Mrs. Kakar. Is that Mr. Kakar or Mrs. Kakar? I'm sorry to this, Mrs. or Mr. Kakar. Okay, so everybody can hear me except Mr. Cocker, so it's something wrong with your computer. So please log out and log back in. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay, no problem. Okay, let's continue. Understand how managerial roles and activities are affected by aspects of the situation. Understand how managers cope with demands, constraints, and choices confronting them. Understand the limitations of descriptive research on managerial activities. Understand how managers can make effective use of their time. Okay. So, typical activity patterns in managerial work. There is a typical activity or work when it comes to managers. Basically, it's just common sense. Pace of work is hectic and unrelenting. You have pretty fast-paced work. Everything is just coming to you. You have to be real responsive and your reactions really matter. So it's pretty fast-forward kind of environment. Content of work is varied and fragmented. So as a manager, you're dealing with different type of jobs, different type of responsibilities all at the same time. So you have so many different responsibilities all coming to you at the same time, and so and there are different chunk sizes of jobs coming to you. As a manager, you are supposed to be responsive and respond accordingly. Many activities are reactive, so many times your activities has to be reactive. So you have to react rather than just act. You have to show some reaction because you are not the one who initiates the activity. There are sometimes you need to show some reaction towards something that is happening to you. So it's not that you always have control over everything. Sometimes you're just exposed to some certain incident, and as a manager, you're supposed to react spontaneously and fast enough to be able to contain what has caused the problem. So interactions often involve peers and outsiders. So a lot of times with your peers and outsiders, you are basically, yes, that's correct, risk management is really important. Interactions often involve peers and outsiders. A lot of times there are peers and outsiders in the class or in whatever environment that you're managing. So you're dealing with people, to be basically, to put it simply. It's just you're not just dealing with machines, you're dealing with people, and with people you have to be able to manage the situation. It's not that you just come and tell people what to do and they do it. Sometimes they don't do it. Sometimes you have to strategically make people do stuff that is different from what they would do if they were not fully managed. And that is very true, that time and activity management is very crucial in this situation. Yeah, very hectic. So, as you can see in this chart down there, you have the lateral superiors, you have the peers, you have the lateral juniors. So, as a manager, there are people above you, we call them lateral superiors. You have people below you, and you have people around you with the same level of job responsibility. Okay, so you have higher executives, you have bosses above you, and then you have direct subordinates and indirect subordinates. So when it comes to management, when it comes to deal with people around you, when it's your superior boss, it's hectic means fast-paced. Hectic means busy. It doesn't mean confusing. It means busy, Mr. Nabi. So you have your superiors. You have to be able to manage them. There are conflicts. There are, there are times unrelenting, and hectic means very busy. It's just unstopping, continuously busy. That's what it means. So you have higher executives above you, and that's what makes it sometimes difficult to deal with it, because sure, absolutely. So that makes it difficult because you're dealing with people above you, and as a manager, you have to be responsible. You have to be initiative in many times, and sometimes being initiative and responsive to your subordinate might cause some conflicts with your superior executives. So you have to be able to manage the situation. You have to be able to understand what it is and how to deal with it. So that's really important. And then, as a manager, you're also dealing with outside company, with the officials of government, clients, suppliers, colleagues in the same profession, important people in the community. So outside your company's environment, you're also dealing with people outside, and you also have responsibilities for it. No, unrelenting basically here it means non-stopping. So that is very busy, non-stopping. Okay. And then when it comes to your subordinates as a manager, you don't have to boss them around all. Like, you'll be able to, you should be able to manage them. You should be able to deal with them as a manager and responsibly act when it comes to it. So, yeah, that's true. Okay, so the subordinates also are in contact with you all the time, and as a manager, you're supposed to be able to, manage the situation. So the problem arises when there's a problem with you and your subordinates. You have to be able to understand the situation, make the other party, which is a subordinate, understand the situation, and then make sure you solve the problem. Okay. Uh, yes. So what I just said is when it comes to your subordinates, a lot of times you should manage the situation because the problems arise, and as a manager, you have to help people understand the situation, understand the problem. So a lot of times your subordinate, your basically employee, your staff has caused the problem. So you should make sure that you help them understand that they caused the problem and you help them fix the problem. So sometimes it's very important to be upfront with them, tell them exactly what they're supposed to do, what is the cause of the problem, and help them fix it. Okay. So typical activity patterns in managerial work. Many interactions involve oral communication. I just typed to this card here, no problem. Uh, Yeah, I'm not sure if Mr. Kakar is hearing me, but everybody in the class seems to be hearing what, the class. So the class has started, so it's probably your system's problem. So you can just log out and then log back in. So just wanted to type it for him. And okay, let's move on. Typical activity patterns in managerial work. There are many interactions involved, and those interactions okay, let me just type it in. Okay, many interactions involve oral communication. So when it comes to management, there are a lot of oral communications which is involved. You are communicating. So management, you know, to a great extent is about communicating with people, communicating what you need, what you want to be done, how you want it to be done, and then your decision processes are disorderly and political. A lot of times when you're a manager, the processes, your decisions are not in an ordered way. A lot of times you need to create that order. They are just scattered. They are just coming to you in not a particular order. So it's you that chooses which one to take priority on the others and how to do it. And then again, it will be political, which means that your decision is going to hurt someone, and some people will like it and some people won't like it. Some people take sides, or some people just, will accept it. So there are a lot of different reactions towards your decisions. You cannot just think that you decide on something and people will just accept it, because it's not going to be the case. You will be facing different reactions from your employees, from your subordinates or superiors. And that's it. So when it comes to management, you are all the time planning. And a lot of times, those plannings are not just formal planning. You're not in a meeting just planning. Every single moment you need to be planning. You need to be getting ready for the next step. You need to be getting ready in order to help your employees and staff understand the situation and understand how you're going to go about it. So you have to be adapting. You have to be adjusting to the changes, because change is all over you. Change is all the time happening to you. And you are the one who decides whether to take the change and use it in your favor or not. So as a manager, you always have that option, and you've got to do that. You've got to take the change and use it in your favor and see how you can, adapt to that change rather than just resist change. Because change will be happening. And as a manager, you have to be adapting to the new situation. Any questions so far? Okay, very good. The content of managerial work. There are basically a different managerial work involved, but generally the content will include job description research. Basically, this is what the job description of the manager is. You need to supervise. You need to supervise your employees. You need to advise them. You need to help them do their stuff. You need to be able to plan and organize. So, besides planning and organizing, you are also making decisions. So when it comes to management, what makes it really crucial is that as a manager, you make decisions. It's not that you just do something you're told and that you would be a good manager. A lot of times you need to make a decision. The decision will bring a difference, will make something different from what it was. So your decision is really important. You're the one who basically chooses to do or not to do something, and because of that, there would be a lot of following, or I would say, consequences to your decision. Then monitoring indicators. You need to monitor. You need to monitor your staff. You need to monitor their performance. You need to monitor what's going on, and that monitoring is really crucial when it comes to management. You need to control. A lot of times you need to control your staff. A lot of times you need to control the situation, and to control the situation or your staff, it takes a lot of responsibility. It takes a lot of initiativeness. It takes a lot of understanding of the situation. You got to be able to in control in the situation to be able to control. You should not lose control by facing a minor problem, because problems are around you all the time, and the only thing that matters is how you take control, how you basically monitor what's going on and then control. Then representing, a lot of times you're representing a lot of different aspects of the company. A lot of times you're representing the management, so your representation should be in line with those levels of representation. So, Mr. Ghaffari, controlling versus supervising or monitoring. There are differences between controlling, supervising, and monitoring. When you are monitoring, you're just looking and observing what's going on and taking notes and understanding it and analyzing it. When you are supervising, you're helping, you're guiding another person to do something. So, and when you're controlling, you're in control. You are controlling how it's done, how it should be done. So it's not that you're just supervising. It's not that you're just, advising someone to do something. It's beyond that. You're actually controlling the situation. So these things are separate matters. They are not exactly the same. There are different ways to go about it. Yes, there are overlaps. Yes, Mr. Alfred. There are definitely overlaps. A lot of times that you're controlling, you're also supervising and monitoring. Or sometimes you monitor, but you have to control. Or sometimes you're supervising, then you have to supervise, you have to be able to monitor. Sorry. So, yes, they are part of each other sometimes. But the general definition, as I said, is different. Then coordinating. A lot of times you need to coordinate, and a lot of times you need to facilitate the situation. You need to coordinate the group work of your team. So you need to make it possible. You need to consult with your staff. A lot of times, representing means you are representing that other part of the company. Let's say when you are a manager, you are representing the company to your employees or to people outside the company. So you are the representative of that other part that you are, doing stuff on their terms. In concluding, with a specific task to be done, the supervisor receiving task to know as well, but wanting to check the work to be defined. Yeah, that's a good explanation, Mr. Navi. Yes, that's correct. Okay, Okay, you consult. A lot of times you consult with your staff, with your managers, with your subordinates or superiors, and a lot of times you administer. Sometimes it's assigning jobs, etc. Sometimes it's just assigning different works to people so that the job gets done in the right order. So, the Mintzberg managerial rules. So, information processing rules. A lot of times you're dealing with information. So, when it comes to information processing rules, he has 3 different roles: the liaison, monitor, and spokesperson. Liaison is the guy who coordinates, is the guy who will have contact with the addressees, the audience, and the managers, and those who will initiate the conversation. So they coordinate that relationship, that communication. Then monitor, the guy who monitors, the guy who analyze the situation, tries to understand it and put it in paper or charts or bars or something understandable. And the spokesperson is the guy who goes there and just speaks instead of the management or whichever level of company that wants to express their opinion. So the spokesperson is just that representative. When it comes to decision, this was the information processing role. Then when it comes to decision making, we have entrepreneur. Then we have disturbance handler. We have resource allocator and negotiator. So each of them are different. Your entrepreneur is the guy who helps the staff or the people of the company be able to build their skills, is able to build them up in order to be successful, in order to do what is expected of them to do. So that guy is the guy who basically helps them improve their skills, helps them refurbish their skills and be able to perform. And then we have disturbance handler, the guy who handles the disturbance. So it's troubleshooter. That's a good term, Mr. Nabi. Yes. It's just when there's problems or disturbance, we'll take care of that. And we have resource allocator. The resource allocator is the guy who distributes the resources, the guy who allocates different resources to people that they have to have access to that in order to be able to perform correctly. And then we have negotiator. Negotiator is the one who negotiates between different parties, between different sides. They negotiate and they make sure that everything is done smoothly. And then we have interpersonal roles. Interpersonal roles are those who liaison or again coordinate. The figurehead is the guy at the top, which is the head of that interpersonal relationship. And then finally the leader. The leader is the one who leads the situation, which is probably the guy who leads the scenario. It could be your manager, it could be you, it could be someone below you, but in that scenario, they're leading. So getting back to disturbance handler, as we mentioned, disturbance handler is the guy who solves the troubles and disturbances. When the process is going smoothly and then suddenly a problem shows up or pops up, the disturbance handler is the guy who makes sure that disturbance, the trouble, goes away and it's fixed in a promptly manner. Yeah, entrepreneur. Entrepreneur is basically told to those guys who are building the skills. Entrepreneurship is when someone helps others to build up their skills, to be successful, teach them, guide them, coach them when it comes to it, so they are able to exercise what they are required to do. So that entrepreneur is some, it could be the manager, it could be the leader, it could be just your coworker, but you have to have that in you. You have to be able to enable people to perform and be able to do what they're supposed to do. And the figurehead, as I mentioned, is the one at the top of that relationship. So interpersonal roles, the figurehead is the guy who is responsible of that, situation, context. Okay. Are there any other questions before we move on to the next slide? Yeah, that's correct. Any questions or any comments? Yeah, liaison is the guy who basically liaises between these parties, between the subordinates, the management. But the spokesperson is the speaker, is the guy who represents basically and mostly the management. But liaison is the guy who basically makes that communication possible between different parties. So a lot of times the management assigns someone as a liaison, and that guy will take care of the communication. But the spokesperson is the guy that they assign, and he or she will come and give the speeches, will come and make the presentations. Yeah, that's true. That's true, Mr. Muhammad Aziz. That's a good way to put it. Yeah, that's true. Okay. So, there are role conflicts. There are role centers, role expectations, conflicting demands, and perceptions of the role requirements. So the role centers are those that they send and assign the roles. So they send the roles to people that are supposed to get those roles and need to take care of those. And there are role expectations. So basically expectation for those roles. So role expectations sometimes cause conflict because the roles, the way they are performed, is not matching the way they are expected to be performed. And that will cause the conflict. There are a lot of times that there is conflicting demand. So the demand that your employees have from you, or your subordinates or superiors have, do not match with your performance. So that will cause a conflict. That will cause misunderstanding, and you need to work on it. And then perceptions of role requirements. A lot of times there is misunderstanding of what that role that you are assigned entails when it comes to your job requirements. So when you don't understand it fully and correctly, you will perform according to your understanding, and that will be different from what you're expected of. And that there will be a conflict. So it's really important as a manager to be able to help people, help your employees and staff understand what exactly they are required of and what is demanded of them. So then they would not be misunderstanding, and when they're performing, they should be performing according to what you clarify, what you tell them. So it's really important for one to understand their job responsibilities, what is required of them. So as a manager, that's one of your responsibilities, to help people understand, to help people get clarification and basically understand what is expected of them. Okay? Any questions so far? Are we clear? Everybody's following us? Any questions? Yeah, role sender, as I mentioned, is the one who sends the roles. He's assigning the roles. He's a guy who will choose who to perform what type of role. So it's basically the role assigner. It's the person who will tell you what to do and what not to do. Conflicting demand is a very simple example is when the management expects the staff to perform and, let's say, follow a certain procedure. Let's say in that procedure they have to make some disclosure. That's demanded of your staff. But at the same time, the staff will basically demand that the disclosure be made by another party. So there is a conflicting of demands. This could be because of the reason that the staff do not know exactly what those disclosures are and what they should make those disclosures. So, like in this situation, when there is a conflicting demand, it's really helpful for management to help the staff understand why they are required of making those disclosures, why they are chosen to make those disclosures, and what those disclosures are not done by others. So when they understand it, it's easier for them to do it. So the conflicting demand is when each party has a different demand, and those demands are not on the same page. They're not complying with each other. They're actually contradicting each other. Okay? Any questions? Perception versus expectation, that's a problem a lot of times. Yes, that's true. But demand is not always just the perception and expectation. It's sometimes because you demand something and the other party demands something different. So it could be because of not having a clear perception, but it's not always just the perception. So the conflict in demand is you have a different demand and the other party has a different demand, and they're contradicting each other. It could be because of misperception. It could be because of not clarity or not enough clarity, but not always. So that's important to understand. So demands are required duties. So we are actually explaining it in more detail here. Demands are required duties, activities, and responsibilities. So when we say demands, we are referring to your duties, to your activities, and responsibilities. And when we're talking about constraints, we are talking about limiting characteristics of the organization and external government. So when we talk about constraints, we are talking about those characteristics that are limited and basically organization and external environment. And when we talk about choices, we are talking about activities that a manager may do, but is not required to do. So choice is what you choose to do. It's not that you have to do it. It's your choice. You will decide and choose to do it. Constraints are those limited characteristics. So you're constrained, and limited with certain shortcomings or certain limitations, and that's something you just need to understand and be prepared. And then demand, as discussed, is your duties. What is required of you, those activities and responsibilities that you're supposed to do. So unique role requirements, situational determinants. There are patterns of relationship that will basically determine your roles. So because of that relationship that you have with certain other parties, you are assigned certain roles and you have certain responsibilities. Then there are work patterns. The pattern of work is actually predetermined sometimes. There is a pattern of work that is expected of the employees or the managers or the subordinates. So that pattern of work is what is required of them, what is expected of them to do. And then exposure, when they are exposed to certain things, they basically perform according to those exposures. Okay? So any questions so far? Yeah, exposure, when you're exposed, when you are facing something. So exposure also will determine your responsibilities a lot of times. Let's say you're a manager and suddenly you're exposed to a problem that your company has experienced. So that exposure in itself will bring in a new role to you. Let's say you work in a refinery, you're a manager there, and suddenly one of the pipes just explodes. So that problem in itself exposes you to a problem, and you as a manager are assigned a new role of fixing that problem. So that is called exposure. So it could be not just always struggles or mistakes. It could be something good. You could be exposed to something really good for a company. That is also called exposure. Yeah, situation, exposing to situations. Positive, negative, neutral situations. Sure. So the situational determinants, what determines the situation? So basically, there are different aspects to it. One is the level of management. What level of management are we talking about? Are we talking about just the immediate primary management level, or superior management, or medium management? So those will have some influence on the situation and what determines the situation. Size of the organizational unit. If it's a big organization, if you are a manager of the whole organization, it could be a huge responsibility and role. But if it's just one department of that huge company, you might be just in charge of a few people. So that is also important. The size. When you're a manager in a small company, you're the manager of the whole company's staff. But when you're a manager in an upper level of a big company, you might be managing several different employees. Then lateral independence. So lateral independence is you like in different departments or in different levels in organization, people might not be depending on each other. They might have separate roles and separate assignments, which is not necessarily related to each other. Then the crisis situation is where when there is a crisis and there's a problem, like back to that oil company, that pipe example is a crisis situation. When a pipe explodes in in an oil company, it's basically a crisis. So as a manager, you have to come in and make the right decisions and make the situation right. A stage in the organizational life cycle. And also a stage, what step in that organizational life cycle are you at? Is it the beginning? Is it the downturn or upturn? Where is it? So that is also important in determining what you should do in that certain situation. Okay? Any questions so far? Yeah, lateral, as I said, different levels in your company might not be dependent with each other. They might be separate, like different departments. They have different roles and assignments. This is totally separated from the other department. So then we call it lateral interdependence when they are dependent on each other. But when they are not, they don't have any lateral interdependence. So it's just the interdependency of different parts or different departments or different sides of the organization. Yeah, lateral, we're talking about levels, layers and levels. Yes, sure. So, changes in the nature of managerial work. What are the changes that you deal when you're a manager? You're dealing basically every day with some changes, and some of those many are economic, political, and society changes. We are living in a dynamic world economy. I mean, the economy is changing every second. So that will also affect you as a manager of a company because you're dealing with other companies and economics is basically influential on what you do because believe it or not, like it or not, the economics is going to affect what you do. So economics is in the nature of the work. Then politics, a lot of times politics will also influence what you do, and then society. Like what type of society, what type of culture, what type of situation in the society are you at? That also affects your managerial work. Then globalization and international business course and business strategy and a lot of other courses, we focus on globalization. Globalization is just expanding to a global level from just your local business, from the region that you are from, to international, transnational relationship, business relationship and everything. So the globalization is also important on what you do when it comes to managerial work. Then computer and telecommunications. So the computer and telecommunications is also important. The structure of the organization, outsourcing and just-in-time inventories. So computer is really important. Companies are getting high-tech savvy, and basically technology plays an important role nowadays. So that will affect the management because a lot of times a lot of responsibilities is done by machines. Staff are only supervising what the machines do. So that will change the definition of roles and responsibilities, and also that will affect the roles and responsibilities of you as a manager. Your expectations will change. So that will bring in the whole new concept to the picture. Then structure of the organization, the way that the organization is structured, like who is above who is assigned what type of job. So you as a manager, where do you stand in that scenario? And those structures are basically very important when it comes to making a decision. When you as a manager are making a decision, you need to know and understand the structure of the company. How is it going to work? Because if you make a decision and assign a job to someone that basically he or she is not supposed to have such a job, that have such an assignment. That will not help the situation. So for you, you need to understand the structure of the organization as a manager. So when you assign jobs to your employees, you assign it according to what they are supposed to do, according to their job requirements. Do you understand? Does everybody following me? And then outsourcing in just-in-time inventory. And then when it comes to outsourcing in just-in-time inventory, we talk about this in detail in business strategy class. But just in a nutshell, for outsourcing and basically just-in-time inventory, we basically, what we mean is we got to make sure that we only outsource those stuff that are not crucial to the activities we do. Because a lot of times companies outsource different activities. But those activities are not those activities that are the main reason that company is basically successful or is a company's competitive advantage. So that's really important to understand. And then the other concept is the just-in-time concept. The just-in-time is when you take this approach that you bring in those inventories as you need them. So the only concern here is, though, to make sure you use outsourcing and just-in-time for those inventories that can be managed like that. Because if you use just-in-time, when you need it and when you order it, you have to get it in the right time. If you are not dealing with responsible, suppliers that cannot give you what you need within the time frame that you need, that means that you cannot perform the just-in-time inventory. A good example is Dell. You know, the company called Dell, the computer company. So they use just-in-time, which means that the way they started a business, basically the idea, the concept works like this. They won't be having any shops, like computer shops selling Dell. But on the website, you go and choose your computer, the color, the type of CPU and everything. And you put an order. And after you make that order, they have that certain days, let's say 30 days or whatever time frame that you choose to put your computer together and get it to you. So they don't keep pre-made computers in their stock. They have parts, and as they receive orders, they just put them together and send it to customers. So that is just-in-time inventory. So for Dell to be able to be successful, they got to make sure that when they receive an order, they're able to put that computer together within that time frame that they promised the buyer. If they're not able to do so, they are not performing what they're supposed to. So, and if Dell is outsourcing certain parts of the company that is core, is important in their company, like putting the computer together could be outsourced, but if that putting it together requires certain expertise, and that expertise is actually what your company is famous for and what you're supposed to do, it's not a good idea to outsource what you do best, you know? So that is the concept. I hope that helps, Mr. Niku. The structure of organization. Structure of organization is like when you have a company which is based on certain concepts. Let's say Toyota is based on the concept of the total quality management. Total quality management is also a concept we discuss in detail in our service quality class. Basically, teach my own book. The structure of organization like Toyota here will determine a lot of responsibilities of the employees because it's a total quality management company, because it's based on service quality and measurement. It's a bottom-up approach. The structure is that people work in teams. They work together. So for them to improve their quality, everybody is working together. It's not that you as a manager just be separated from the staff and you tell them what to do and they do it. Everybody is involved. So that's the structure of company and how they, decide. So, Mr. Navid, Toyota is not an example of total quality management. I'm using Toyota's structure to teach you how the structure of company, the structure of Toyota, the way it's divided, which is based on total quality management, will determine the type of management you do. So please understand, it's not the total quality, it's the structure of the company that determines total quality management. Yeah, right. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. Managerial activities. It's very good to understand when you are a manager to understand what type of activities you're talking about, what type of activities every day you're doing, what type of activities every day you're involved in. So basically, you can just divide them by 4. There are many times you make decisions. As a manager, you make decisions. If you're a manager and you make no decisions, something's wrong with your management. You either got the wrong job, or you either don't know how to do your job, or you either basically are not a manager. They just call you manager. So decision making is a must. So it comes with management. Then influencing. So when you make decisions, like it or not, you are making influences on other people because you're doing something that could be done differently. So that will change, that will cause some influence on other people. So then we have developing and maintaining relationships. As we said, as a manager, you're communicating with people. You are developing and maintaining relationships. So as a manager, you have to have communication with your staff. So then right there, you're basically creating a relationship, or managing a relationship, or developing a relationship, or maintaining. Sometimes a relationship needs to be changed in a certain way. And finally, exchanging information. As a manager, you are exchanging information all the time. You exchange information with your employees, with your subordinates, with your superiors, and based on those decisions you're making, based on those information, you are making those decisions. So that information is really important. So as you can see, there are overlaps. When you make decisions, you make those decisions basically a lot on information you, and then you influence others, and then you develop relationships. So as you can see, there is overlap. So what's the question here, Mr. Navid? Planning, organizing, controlling, decision making, and supervising. Can you elaborate a little bit? Well, yeah, those are managerial activities. But these are the overall like planning to a certain extent is part of decision making, and organizing is also part of decision making. It could be part of developing and maintaining relationships. Then decision making you mentioned, supervising is also part of developing and maintaining relationships. There are, yes. There are also sub-elements, that's true. That's true. Okay. So any questions so far? Any comments or questions? Applications for managers. Guidelines for managing time. Understanding the reasons for demands and constraints. Oh, okay, yeah, sure, absolutely. Let's go back to exchanging. So exchanging information is basically getting information. So as a manager, when you're dealing with your subordinate, when you're dealing with your staff, you are getting information from them, and based on that information, you make decisions. So that is part of exchanging information. Or when you're talking to your superior managers, you need to get information or give information to them, and based on those information you give them, they make decisions. So exchanging information is just giving and getting information. The process of giving and getting, or like receiving and basically giving information. Knowledge sharing, I would say. It includes reporting. It includes explaining. It includes analysis to superiors and to your subordinates. So both ways. Yeah, it's knowledge sharing. Communicating information is what you do in exchanging information. But exchanging information is more of just like a continuous process, rather than just communicating information, it's just giving information. So you can call it communicating information also, that's for sure. But it's called exchanging because it's the process of giving and taking. And getting, actually. Yeah. But you can call it communicating information, yeah, because that's what you do. You're communicating. Sure. Then here we have applications for managers. Understanding the reasons for demands and constraints. It's good for you to understand the reasons for demands and constraints. It's good to understand why there are certain demands, there are certain requirements, and limitations. So it's really important for managing time to understand the reasons behind it. The reasons that why certain employees are assigned a certain job, why you are assigned a certain job, and those will help you to perform better. So understanding, having a clear picture, and having the correct perception is really important. Then expanding the range of choices. Being able to expand the range of choices before you is also very important. You should be able to expand those choices. You should be able to add on to those choices and determine what you want to accomplish. So you are supposed to be able to determine what you are going to accomplish. What is that? Why?
analyze how to use your time. As a manager, you are supposed to be able to manage your time. So managing your time is really, really important. And then plan daily and weekly activities. So planning is also very important. As a manager, you should be planning everything. Everything should go based on planning. You cannot just do whatever comes to you and just follow what comes to you and do accordingly. You have to be prepared. You have to be prepared in advance so that you don't get surprised, so that you are able to perform and you're able to make the right decision. By expanding the range of choices is by adding on possibilities. So let's say when you are limited with the technology or computer that you have, as a manager, adding certain new technology or being creative with the technology you have will help you to fix certain problems. So you're actually adding knowledge, adding resources all the time. Yeah, to increase the number of options that you have. So that helps you to solve the problem faster and better. Understand the reasons for demands and constraints means that when you are limiting a certain staff, when you are putting constraints on them or on yourself or on certain aspects of company, you should always know the reason why. Because it's okay as an employee. I mean, it's not always okay, but it's more understandable that a normal, regular employee does the job without knowing why. You are assigned a job and you just perform it because you're told to. But as a manager, it's not okay. As a manager, you need to know why. As a manager, you need to know why this employee is not supposed to touch this part of the machine. You are supposed to know why this employee is required of doing all these jobs. And yourself, why you should be doing this and this and this and not that. So you need to know why as a manager. It's different from a regular, typical employee. You need to know why. It's different. Okay? Any questions or comments so far? Any questions? Anybody have any questions? No? Okay. Let's go to the next slide. So, applications for managers, guideline for managing time, continuation of the previous slide. So, to manage your time as a manager, a lot of times you need to avoid unnecessary activities. There are certain activities that you don't have to deal with. You can just ignore them. You don't have to deal with them. You have to be able to conquer the procrastination. The procrastinations and, hurdles and troubles. You need to be able to conquer them. So they say what should be done today, don't put it off till tomorrow. So it's really important to be able to perform just the same day or the same time that you're facing that challenge. So you need to conquer those putting it off and those cancellation and delay. Take advantage of reactive activities. So there are activities that are reactive. You're reacting to certain activities. So use those moments, use those activities in your advantage, instead of just being a victim of that situation. Because a lot of times you're reacting to a certain problem, but that reaction itself could help you perform better, could help you succeed. So get comfortable and basically be comfortable taking advantage of those moments, and make time for reflective planning. Planning. When it comes to management, planning is really an important role. You're dealing with people. You're trying to help people perform, and you're also trying to help companies perform. So you are basically required to do a lot of planning. So make sure you have enough time to do good planning. Conquer procrastination, as I mentioned, is conquer those hurdles of the times that you are putting it off, canceling it. Rather than canceling it, try to fix it and do it. Be able to perform. Avoid unnecessary activities. Avoid unnecessary activities is, let's say, as a manager, you are supposed to spend like certain time with your staff and then coach them, see what's the problem and stuff like that. And unnecessary activity could be, in that process, you just spend so much time on one problem rather than the whole picture of the problem. You go in detail with that minor problem, which is supposed to be that department's issue, and then you forgo the whole big picture and the big problem that you're facing. So in that meeting, you're unnecessarily spending too much time on a minor issue, and then you're losing time to spend enough time on the major issue. So you can avoid that. You could just address it minorly and then focus on the main thing that as a manager you're supposed to do. So that's unnecessary. Or unnecessary meeting. I mean, it's always good to have meetings. It's not. I'm not suggesting that meeting with your employees is unnecessary. As a manager, you should always be open to meetings with your staff and all that. But what I'm saying is unnecessary, let's say, time spent on certain minor thing, and that could be avoided by just assigning it to another person who's in charge. Who, let's say, if that minor problem was something in a certain department and there is a coach in that department, you could just assign that to that coach, save that time to spend some quality time with your employees, explaining to them why and why not they're supposed to do certain stuff. So it's always good to be able to assign jobs to others. It's always good to be able to understand the situation better and then take actions. Are you following me? Okay. Are there any questions so far? Yeah, take advantage of the reactive problem. Okay, like back to that oil company that's exploding the pipe. The pipe exploded and you have a big problem. You got to fix it. But that exposes you to the fact that this pipe is probably old, or this pipe needs some repair, or brings to your attention that when something explodes in that area, how big a deal it could be and how much it contains. How much time it takes to contain the problem. So that, if you take advantage of that, you will be able to fix a future problem by fixing that pipe totally, by understanding how to take action uh, based on a problem like this. So that's taking advantage of this problem, because you're using this problem as a learning experience for future and get prepared for a future. So when you're fixing this problem, you're also fixing some future problems. This is taking advantage of this situation. Okay? Then, continuation of the guidelines. Identify important problems that can be solved. So, as a manager, you always need to identify the important problems that need to be solved or can be solved. Look for connections among problems. A lot of times, problems are connected to each other. One problem leads to another, and the other one leads to another. So the main cause, could be something really minor. So if you remove that, all these problems will be gone. Then experiment with the innovative solution. So always think out of the box. Always be able to look at the big picture and try to solve it that way. Then come up with new ideas. Come up with strategies and methods, not necessarily those that are the traditional methods. You can always come with something new. Take decisive action to deal with crisis. So when there is a crisis, when there is a problem, make sure you're right there, you're making the decision, you're fixing the problem right there. Don't wait for the problem to be fixed by itself or others. You're the manager, you're the one who should take initiative. Take them seriously. Okay? Any questions? Any questions or comments? Okay, if not, let's go to task. Okay? Look at this chart. So your task is according, let's write it down here. According to your experience, what is the best strategy? Outsiders as Okay, so look at this chart, right? We explained it as a manager, you're dealing and interacting with your superiors and subordinates. So my question to you is, according to your experience, using your experience, what is the best strategy to interact with those peers when you are a manager and also outsiders? So take a moment, think about it, and then we'll discuss it. Everybody understands the question? Anybody has any question on the task? Do you understand it? Okay, seems there's no question. So take a moment and think about it, start working on it, and then we'll discuss it. Okay? Okay. Your time starts right now. Okay, so let's see what you have. So the best strategy I'm applying is planning with all the team and insiders as well. We have our team monthly plan tasks, and sometimes it's difficult to accomplish all of that. Okay, very good. So, Mr. Miyako, sometimes it doesn't go according to your plans. So, so it's you can what we learned today was we could sometimes use and take advantage of those moments, those exposure moments. Yes, it's giving reasons. Those who politics as well. I would say, as a manager, never try to play politics. You always try to be straightforward, be as transparent as possible. That way, it's the best politics. If you want to play politics, you will not go far. You will, I mean, you could go far, but it's gonna be easy to go down. Make relationship and understand the man. Very good. To be a good listener. Okay, listening is really important to understand the concerns of others, why something is important to them, why something is not, and then act accordingly. Usually take it up. Okay, very good. Okay, who wants to share his or her answer other than those who shared? How about the rest of you? I do understand. Uh, yes, as a manager, you need to understand that you never have to play politics. I mean, you have your job requirements and everything, so you never have to. You don't really have to, but you use it as a method and technique. So I would say focus on using better, more productive, and empowering techniques rather than just using political. Uh, because if someone on the other party don't like it, it's easier for you to go down rather than when you're focusing on your performance or on your right decisions or job responsibilities. I would suggest yes, focusing on your responsibilities, on your job requirements, because politics will change. The party that likes that politics in that company might just go next day. I mean, the management might change. But if you focus on your performance, if you focus on solid relationship with your employees and superiors, nothing can change. If you focus on politics, if the management or the leadership of a company changes, the new leadership that does not like that politics will just make you go away. So you're basically not stable enough. But if you're focusing on your performance, if you're focusing on solid managerial characteristics of yours, nobody can touch you. Politics change, but you will be staying right where you are, and actually you will be improving because they know that you are a solid manager. It doesn't matter for you what type of leadership you get. You always do the best performance. So I think that's the best bet, rather than just focusing on politics. and then forget about the main job that you have to make. Yeah, I mean, sometimes you're a politician, yes, but playing politics is not necessarily about politics. It's more on being nice to superiors and using some strategies rather than your performance. So that's what we mean by politics. And I would suggest not to do that. It's always good to have good rapport and relationship with your superiors, but try not to use politics as a tool to improve or be successful. Make it a statement. Make your performance and knowledge a statement that speaks for you, rather than just politics. Okay. Any questions or comments? The best politics you use is great performance. Doing your job right. I think that's the best politics, and everybody will like it. So no matter who will be the manager or the leader of the company, they will like it because they know you perform. Okay, any comments? Before we end the class today, is there any comments or questions? Okay, so that was the end of this session. Thank you everyone for attending the class. I'll see you next week.